The late afternoon sun hung low over Beirut on March 16, 1985, turning the narrow streets a hazy gold as traffic pushed past the gates of the American University Hospital. Terry Anderson, the Associated Press Bureau chief in Lebanon, stepped outside after a game of tennis. He was tired, carrying his racket under one arm, thinking about the stories he still needed to file. The day felt ordinary, crowded, noisy, and routine. He walked toward his car without suspicion, hearing distant horns and voices echoing off concrete walls. He had no way of knowing he was seconds from disappearing. A van screeched to a stop beside him. Before he could react, two armed men rushed forward. One shoved him from behind, the other pulled a cloth over his eyes. He felt his racket drop, heard it clatter on the pavement, and then hands forced him into the vehicle. The door slammed shut. The world went dark except for the sound of the engine revving and the sharp sting of blows meant to keep him silent. The men belonged to Islamic Jihad, a militant group operating during the chaos of the Lebanese civil war. Hostage-taking had become a tactic, a way to pressure Western governments, and Terry was the highest-profile American they had captured. Inside the van, he felt fists on his ribs and smelled sweat and gasoline. His breathing turned shallow and fast as he tried to figure out whether he would be killed within hours or held for ransom. No one answered his questions. No one even spoke to him except to shout orders he couldn't understand. The first days were a blur of motion. His captors moved him constantly, blindfolded, shoved from vans to stairwells to basement rooms that smelled of mold. Sometimes he was kept in an apartment with curtains drawn tight. Other times he was chained to a radiator in a windowless cell. His wrists hurt from the metal cuffs. His ankles throbbed from the weight of the chains. He had no idea if it was day or night unless he heard distant gunfire or the faint hum of a generator. Terry's world began shrinking to the size of whatever room he was held in. He learned to study sounds, the footsteps of guards, the scrape of a key, the quiet murmur of men arguing outside his door. He never knew what they were arguing about. Each time a guard approached, he braced for a beating or an interrogation. The fear never left his body, not even in sleep. During long stretches of isolation, he forced his mind to stay active. He prayed. He recited news stories he had written years earlier. He replayed memories of his fiancée, his sister, and the young daughter he had left behind in the United States. His daughter had been a toddler when he was taken. He didn't know if she would remember him. The thought cut deeper than the restraints. Weeks became months. The militants moved him without warning, often at night. They dragged him through buildings damaged by shelling or into cars that swerved through streets lit only by burning trash. Every movement felt like a rehearsal for execution. He taught himself not to hope during transfers. Hope made the fear sharper. Eventually, after more than a year, he was placed in a room with another hostage. Human contact, even one whispered word at a time, changed everything. They shared scraps of food, compared injuries, and exchanged tiny pieces of information passed through rumor. Terry learned the names of other hostages, some Americans, some Europeans, all held in similar conditions. They developed unspoken routines to keep each other sane. Quiet conversation, stretching exercises, and the careful preservation of scraps of cardboard or cloth that could serve as makeshift pillows. He spent multiple birthdays in captivity without knowing the exact dates. He recognized seasons only by the temperature of the air slipping through cracks in the walls. Some guards ignored him completely. Others were quick to strike. He survived illnesses without medicine, shivering fevers that left him weak on the floor. The uncertainty hollowed him out. At any moment, he could be taken from his cell and never returned. Still, he found anchors. He measured time by the guards' habits, who smoked, who hummed under his breath, who checked in with a softer tone. He memorized the grain of the wooden door, the smell of dust in the corners, the shape of the ceiling. Survival became a matter of finding structure where none existed. By the 4th year of his captivity, Terry had been moved so often that he lost track of where he was entirely. His beard had grown long. He had lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. But he refused to surrender the last pieces of himself. He held on to the belief that someone was fighting for his release, even if he couldn't see it. He clung to fleeting moments of humanity from guards who slipped him extra bread or turned a beating aside when another militant wasn't watching. Then the political landscape changed. In 1991, the Lebanese civil war neared its end, and international pressure increased on Hezbollah, the broader organization connected to his captors. Hostages began to be released in small groups. Terry heard the rumors from other prisoners, but he didn't let himself believe them. Too many times he had been told lies as a way to control him. On December 4th, 1991, a guard entered his room and quietly removed his chains. Terry was taken outside, overwhelmed by sunlight he had barely seen in years, and driven to a Syrian military base. From there, he was handed over to Western diplomats. The moment the blindfold came off, he saw open sky. For the first time in 2,454 days, he was free. His sister greeted him with tears. Journalists surrounded him, and days later, he reunited with the daughter who had grown up during his captivity. Her voice, her height, her smile, everything about her was new. He tried to memorize her face the way he had memorized cracks in the walls of his cells. Freedom came with its own challenges. Doctors documented muscle loss from years of restraint, nerve damage in his wrists and ankles, and sleep disturbances that pulled him awake convinced he was still chained to a radiator. Crowds made him uneasy. Choices, basic ones, like what to eat for dinner, felt overwhelming because he had lived so long without any. He rebuilt his life slowly. He testified about what he endured not for revenge, but to help people understand the personal cost of hostage-taking. He met with families of other captives, offering whatever support he could. And he built a relationship with his daughter, who welcomed him not as a stranger, but as a father who had fought to come home. Terry often spoke about the mix of gratitude and grief that shaped his life afterward. Gratitude for surviving, grief for the years he could never reclaim. But he faced the future the same way he survived captivity, day by day, refusing to let the darkest years erase the rest of his life. His captivity lasted more than 6.5 years, the longest of any American held during the conflict. He carried the weight of it forever, but he also carried the knowledge that he had endured something meant to destroy him, and walked back into the world with his spirit intact. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.